What is holding me back? It's a question we all face at some point, and maybe now is that point for you. As we look in the proverbial, or perhaps literal mirror, and consider our personal, professional, or athletic potential, we know we're better than our outcomes represent. But what is our limiter? The knee-jerk response in 2024 is to simply shift to the role of victim, essentially removing all responsibility from ourselves and placing it elsewhere. Our boss, parents, bad luck, culture, the referees, you get the idea. Admittedly, the world is far from a level playing field. However, wherever we currently find ourselves on that field, our choices, impactful choices, remain available that will influence our results. In fact, there's an entire philosophy built on identifying and then bolstering our limiters. The theory of constraints. Developed by Dr. Eli Goldratt as a project management tool, the theory of constraints came to life 40 years ago this month with his business novel, The Goal, which sits on the bookshelf in front of me. The core elements include the following: concepts which I will then shift over to some personal examples to enhance our lives. Number one, every system, and folks, we are the system in this picture, has at least one constraint hindering achievement of the goal at hand. So step one is to identify the most significant constraint. Number two, tune into the reality that improving anything other than the constraint will not effectively impact our results. The constraint is the limiter. Stop wasting resources, time, energy elsewhere until that constraint is addressed. Number three, once identified, take every step possible to what he calls exploit or affect the constraint. This involves throwing everything we've got at it, the entire kitchen sink, until it is no longer the constraint. And then number four, rinse and repeat. Perhaps this seems obvious, basic, too simplistic. Yeah, I know. It's more fun to chase the shiny object or go in search of the secret formula. Friends, this is the secret formula. Here's a personal example. I enjoy endurance sports. Unfortunately, when it comes to marathons, I've had some gut issues that have derailed my targeted outcomes 23 out of 26 times at that distance. That's 11 Ironmans and 15 open marathons. I keep coming back, and I adjust a whole bunch of things: training, equipment, sleep, pacing, self-talk, and more. All of those are beneficial to address, but I haven't addressed this constraint. And none of those are the constraint. Until I correct the gut issues that are affecting me, none of the others play a role of any significance. Let's look at a business example. And some of you are going to have to look back in your history novels for this one. But let's say you sold fax machines in the early 80s as they first began to be readily available. There were many improvements you could have made, from noise to clarity of the print and the space required. But were any of those the true limiter? No. The constraint was simple. Almost nobody else had one, so they were useless. No one cared that the machine could magically send a print out to someone across the country if they didn't have the ability to receive it. The only thing that mattered was getting some form, any form of fax machine placed in as many locations as possible. Companies threw everything, even their early profits, at that singular constraint. And once practically everyone had one, the floodgates to profits through replacement ink, paper, and better machines opened wide. But as long as that constraint continued, nothing else was of any consequence. And by the way, you can see what happened when the internet took effect. Perhaps your desired personal outcome is additional energy levels. Maybe you've tried supplements, various caffeine schedules, stand-up desk. You've changed your meals, adjusted exercise routines, reduced your alcohol intake, and other things. Those are all good. But throughout your adjustments, your peaceful, screen-free time in bed has remained 6.5 hours most nights. Folks, that's the limiter. That's the constraint. Sure, all the other stuff, it's great. Makes sense to consider it. But until time in bed is addressed, nothing else will garner significant outcomes. With that noted, again, maybe this isn't you, but if that's the example, then you'd want to throw every possible resource into creating quality time in bed, even if it means reducing other positive things. then and only then will the other variables provide any notable traction forward. The theory of constraints is countercultural. It runs upstream against the Instagram bro science and the social media optimization world that highlights the final 2% of the equation while ignoring the foundational 98%. If we're in it simply for entertainment, then sure, knock yourself out pursuing the latest hashtag Instagood or hashtag best life. However, if results are our priority, there's a simple, straightforward 3-step solution. Number 1, identify the primary constraint. Number 2, shift all resources to addressing number 1. And number 3, rinse and repeat. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of the Catalyst 360 podcast. If you are looking to pursue your national board certification as a health and wellness coach, we have one more cohort starting later this year. Now's the time to get registered. All the details on our Institute site at catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or please reach out with any questions, results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And if you're an employer, EAP, or wellness service provider, and you're looking for how can we create a more meaningful approach to coaching for those we serve, Catalyst Coaching 360 might be worth a look. And now it's time to be a catalyst. This is Catalyst Coaching's Dr. Brad Cooper. Make it a great rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst 360 podcast.